Kia ora. Marama Davidson.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Kia ora koutou, te whare pāremata. Mr. Speaker, the Green Party fully supports the retention of Māori whenua and the mana motu hake of mana whenua over our whenua Māori. We absolutely support the mana motu hake of whānau, hapu and iwi to be able to use their land, retain their land, in a way that upholds their connection and whakapapa and will provide for mokopuna generations to come. We will not be supporting the Ture Whenua Māori bill in this second reading, Mr. Speaker. Our simple premise is that this is incredible reform of Māori land law and as such needs to have broad support and deep understanding collectively from across Te Ao Māori, from across iwi and hapu and Māori landowners around the motu. And we cannot say that that is what is happening at the moment. So it is not enough of a threshold for the Green Party to support this legislation which will have enormous implications for whenua Māori, whenua that we have tried so hard to hold on to after most of it was already stolen, confiscated by several different means. Surely we can then understand that in any major land legislation reform that we want to be really careful, that we want to ensure that we fully understand the implications of the legislation and that we broadly support. But that is not the situation in this particular legislation. I do want to take a short step back for a minute because I too echo the support of our Māori Affairs Select Committee and the tautoko to Nuk Korako in leading the discussion and the deliberation that we had across the parties. We, in the Select Committee process, after the submissions were received from around the country, we agreed as a Select Committee to come back outside of ordinary hours and expectations to make time to sit together and finish our clause-by-clause analysis and sit with the Crown specialists with expertise to try and meet the date of getting this legislation into the House at this point. I will state that it was raised why we wanted to rush the legislation into the House at this point. Absolutely that was raised and is a valid concern, not just from the opposition politicians, but also from Māori landowners. This is important and it should beg the respect of proper consultation. And the measurement for effective consultation cannot surely just rest with numbers. It cannot just be about how many meetings were held around the country at what time. The measurement for effective and genuine consultation and engagement has to arrive at a point where collectively Māori landowners understand and broadly support the reforms that are being proposed in Ture Whenua Māori. And that has not been achieved. The Green Party absolutely want to see mana whenua, iwi and hapu and marae being able to decide our own destinies and visions and dreams for the land in the way that we see fit. We absolutely support that, and in fact, one of the reasons that we won't be supporting Ture Whenua is because the bill actually fails to address some of those actual impediments, those barriers to utilising land. Now, I say utilising land with speech quote marks because I think we also have to understand, and Tina Ngata, in her oral submission on behalf of the Tikanga Marae Taiao program in Gisborne, stated very importantly that the notion of economic development that the bill is based on is counterintuitive to that which they stand for, the retention and well-being of our lands and resources. So I also don't want us to get completely stuck on fixed definitions on what is economic development and what is land utilisation. And we heard that throughout the submission process also, who says when land is being well used, well utilised and not. That too has to be up to Māori. Mr. Speaker, I also want to echo that I want to acknowledge the Tauhara North No. 2 Trust, who were one of the trusts who provided an example where they felt that they had been able to achieve what they needed to in the current status quo. And therefore, this large reform and large changes proposed in this legislation were unnecessary, and the approach and process was being driven about the wrong way. We need to make sure that the agenda for large-scale landlord transformation is driven by Māori, and that needs to be the bottom line. I too want to add my congratulations to John Grant and Tāria Tāhana as Crown specialists in deliberating with us, going through the clause-by-clause analysis. They were fantastic in being able to provide the Māori Affairs Select Committee with some sort of clarity on the specific points of the legislation, big, thick piece of legislation. And we cannot undermine the value that our staff, that our specialists were able to provide us with, and I really wanted to add my voice to that congratulation from all of us. But what is really at stake here? Oh, and then also through the submission process, it was raised by submitters, will this Ture Whenua bill negate the current confiscation of Māori freehold land for the purpose of public works under the Public Works Act? If we are serious about the retention of whenua Māori, of Māori land, if we are serious about making laws to make sure that we can hold on to the last bits of it, then why are we also not amending the Public Works Act, or at least considering, and I understand the sort of the difficulty of the legal crossovers between the two different pieces of legislation, Ture Whenua and Public Works. However, the principle remains. If we really want to retain Māori land, then we should be looking at the current status quo, that the government can still confiscate it for the purposes of public works such as roads, bridges and infrastructure. And I want to acknowledge my colleague Catherine Delahunty for her members' bill, a simple members' bill that didn't require going around the country for months and months, but offers a clear solution to the very purpose that this large, complex piece of legislation thinks it is trying to achieve. So, however, the Minister has not been able to guarantee that we would see that sort of protection under these reforms. So again, the Green Party, the threshold is of support from Māori collectively is not enough for the Green Party to be able to support this legislation with dignity. We absolutely support, in closing, the notion, and actually one of our policy platforms is to provide Māori with the development finance, something else which is not at all addressed in this bill, a barrier which has been a long-standing identification of the lack of development finance, which again is not addressed by this bill. So we welcome the discussion, we welcome how we are going to do this better, how we are going to make sure that Māori landowners can properly use land for whatever it is that they want to, but this bill isn't getting there. The reforms are so huge and so complex, everybody needs to be on board. Kia ora.